the Nigerian Institute of International Affairs has taken that first step to go on that path to find the answer. That answer will start with the conversations, with the discussions, with the assembly of experts who are going to come and give their own opinion. And because we have intellectuals here, they are going to look at it critically and start to give us plans and strategies and whatever it is that will chart this course into this unknown territory. Sport is interesting. It is enjoyable. So you don't know when it gets into you. Nelson Mandela said it. I will keep repeating it, that sport has the power to change the world. Patrice Lumumba, professor, the Kenyan man, said, Africans, you must unite, or else we all will perish. That's where we have to start to conceive in our heads. That road from Johannesburg to Cairo, that rail line from Dakar to Eden, that borderless Africa, where we can all move as one because we come from the same source. We are going to look at our diasporan brothers who have gone there to get all the knowledge in the world and come back to develop. Africans of African descent who are out there, 200 million of them, that are searching for a home. They have the resources. We must welcome them. We must connect the dots. We must know we are brothers and sisters. And together, we will do that which Mandela says we can do. We have taken the first step here. We ask you all to please join us. I thank you once again. Thank you very much.
I personally am a sport investor. I own a football club in Abu Dhabi. It's a second division club. I know what it means. I know what it means to invest in football. And I feel that after this, your templates, your agendas will be ready to see how we can work together. Thank you all.
Delighted to be here today, but a bit jealous, a little, because after the Civil War in 1970, our leaders came together and said 2 brands will make a difference in this country, and that is sports and culture. And now we've been talking about sports. Where is culture? Because culture is quite very important for us. So I want to thank the organizers, particularly the DG of NIA, a man of courage, and my brother Odegwami for his tenacity in making sure anything to promote our country must be taken very seriously. We are ready partners. The project moving Nigeria forward, diplomacy of sports is related and celebrated with diplomacy with culture. So together we move this country forward. Thank you.
Professor is a senior consultant for the United Nations and various international non-governmental organizations. Politics, democracy, and conflict in Africa, and of course, without mentioning, he is a colossus that bestrides the world of sports. Prof, you are welcome. Marketing professional with over 20 years in the industry. Based in Atlanta, Georgia, Mr. Oyo has provided very significant backroom support for some of the world's leading sports events. It is indeed, ladies and gentlemen, a pleasure to have this gentleman with us all the way from the United States.
Ambassador in the house, there comes the Minister of Sports. It's the best time to come. Welcome, Your Excellency. Welcome, Your Excellency. A great person in the Institute. He's an associate fellow of the Nigerian Institute of International Affairs. And when we said to him, we want to break new grounds, not fallow grounds, but new grounds, and that we want to fully embrace the length, the breadth, the width, and the weight of sports diplomacy, he said to me, DG, we can work together. This is something I have always dreamt of. This is something I've always looked forward to. Each time I am reminded of what Nelson Mandela said about what sports can do to change the world. That sports, indeed, is not simply an instrument of diplomacy and therefore not just a soft power variable, but sports is also an instrument of peace and security. He reminded me of a point during the Nigerian Civil War when the then head of state, General Yakubu Gowon, decided it was time to bring peace to bear even in the battlefront. And he invited the great Pelé, Pelé of the world, Pelé of world football. And Pelé came, and for the period Pelé was in Lagos, the fighters on both sides of that civil war, the fighters on the side of Biafra and the fighters on the side of the federal troops, told their commanders that for the next 2 hours, just let us listen to commentaries from Lagos. There won't be any fight whatsoever. And yesterday I was reminded of what happened in 1996 when Nigeria won the gold medal at the Olympic Games. This was far away in Rwanda. And it's Professor Bunting who gave me this. And he says he was in Rwanda in Kigali on that day in 1996. And in the midst of the genocide and the civil war that had engulfed that country, unfortunately, the whole country came to a standstill in celebration of Nigeria's conquest of the world. You all Nigerians, many of us here, you would know that on the day the Super Eagles is playing, it's like a national holiday. Everything you know that sports rules the world in the following way. In the early 1900s, Marcus Garvey, I'm sure you all have heard of Marcus Garvey. He was fired by the imagination of the black race in the world, but also to restore the dignity using the space that he thought he had. And he asked the following question: where is the black president of the world? Where is the black army? Where is the black navy? Who is going to lead the black race of this world? And he came to the conclusion that if that space, the black race had to move back to Africa. And so Marcus Garvey began a process that history now recognizes as the Back to Africa movement. And what he was saying was very simple. And that's what we're going to reenact here today. Marcus Garvey was saying, until you find a space that is fully inhabited by the black race, that space which the world has accorded to the black race as the platform, the only platform that it has, will never be put coming back to Africa that would give that space a strength. That was the beginning of the Pan-African movement. And the Pan-African movement, for those who would know, for a long time existed outside the continent of Africa. It took the joining of people like Kwame Nkrumah and the great Kenneth Kaunda to that movement to bring it back home to Africa. And of course, Mwalimu Nyerere, who is represented here today by our able guests and ambassadors from Tanzania, these were the people in the forefront. But Pan refers to many things. And the symbolic representation of what Marcus Garvey dreamt about led us to the festac that we had. You will know that in 1977, we hosted the second festival of the black and African, civilization all over the world. Now, that was the beginning of cultural diplomacy. But think for 1 minute, and this is what we found out in the course of our research, that in some of the geostrategic and geospatial considerations of international politics, people deal with spaces. And it is the spaces that define who these people are and what their trajectories would be in the diplomatic world. There is a space that is almost naturally African and black. And that has been given to Africa and to the black race from the creation of time. The other name, the twin name for the black and the African is sport. There is nothing else to talk about in the world other than sports. And yet, there is a threat that even that sport would find our displacement. And I was sharing with the professor yesterday. For a long time, we had the long distance races. But today, we are even threatened by some displacement, by forces that have come into Africa to say, we don't want you to monopolize that space. The essence of sports diplomacy is not monopoly. It is sharing. It is going around and letting the world know that we can do many things together. That this strength that Africa has can be taken all around. The second pedestal. Look all around you. You would find that in every nook and cranny of the world, there is a black person, there is an African. And all modern day ambassadors and diplomats know that today you have formal and informal ambassadors. All those are sportsmen and women are ambassadors of Africa, ambassadors of Nigeria, and ambassadors of the black race. Many of them need no introduction at all. Many of them can move mountains. They can do things in furtherance of our constitutive interests. They can do things that we would have reserved only for ministers of foreign affairs. But this is the world's reality today. So we thought, as the Nigerian Institute of International Affairs, that we must go back to the Garvey message, the Back to Africa movement. We must rediscover Africa. We must re-energize Africa using the greatest instrumentality that we have. Sports is natural to us. And when they see us, they see people who excel. So why not? It changes the narrative of our world, because in terms of the comparative advantage that we have, it is time to tell the world, you can learn from us. And what better way to do this than to use the pedestal of sports? Ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, the Nigerian Institute of International Affairs, all thanks to Ambassador Segun Odebami. I see Segun Runshewe here, next door to him. He must be wondering, so what can you do with sports? The Honorable Minister is here, and I'm sure that together today we'll work out many things that will make us people who will be can't beat. So I welcome you. It's my singular honor and pleasure, my delight actually, on behalf of all of us at the Institute, to welcome you and to say to you, you are part of this history that we are making today. Welcome and support us. Thank you.
As I walked in, I saw the DG speaking. After listening for less than 30 seconds, I called for my pen and a paper, as if I knew that a lot of powerful words will come out. So I took a lot of notes within 5 minutes of listening to him. But I also realized that from what he has said, he seems to have taken the thunder out of my own speech this morning. I thank you for doing part of my job. But you bear with me this morning, because I want to spend just 4 minutes to just make very important recognitions. The fact that we're at this point in our history as a country when it comes to sports development is because we've had collaborators, strategic implementation partners, and people who are lovers of sports in this country. In 3 years, we have done the heavy lifting. We've tried to change the fundamentals of the narratives of our sports development. We've tried to move away from just sponsoring sporting events, all African Games, Olympics, Commonwealth, to engendering what is truly sports development as it's understood and conceived across the world. So this morning, very quickly, in no particular order, I want to thank the DG and recognize him for this platform, for this opportunity, and for putting this institution behind the idea of developing sports development through diplomacy in Nigeria. mathematical, that's what I call him. Chief Segun Odegbami, relentless. Last week I said if by any chance we can have a thrift player on the field, we'll find a way to keep him on the touchline so that he can give us those moves again. Thank you for being part of this and being the person that pulled the trigger for this. Let me also recognize Otumba Oshewe. Thank you so much. Prof, I enjoy reading you every week. Thank you so much. I knew I was going to see you here today. Thank you very much. It was just yesterday I sent a message. I just sent the flyer and a 30-second video to the president of the NFF. I did not put any message. No comments. I just sent it to him. And he responded, I will be there. Well, that's somebody that knows his job. So NFF President Amaju Pinnick. I think it's time to also recognize MTN. Because in the last 18 years, we've tried to bring about the idea of sports as an industry. That is sports as business. So I want to recognize MTN, one of the foremost organizations that bought into that idea, going ahead to partner with the NFF, hundreds of millions to support the development of football. So I thank MTN. I know they're here today. They were able to open that floodgate because as we closed last year, we had Premier Lotto walk through the door with over 400 million. The sports as business. As we closed last year, we had Stanbic IBTC funding insurance that's never happened before for all our players. And I'm told that the door is still open and several other organizations will come through. Let me also, I sought out 6 people, 6 resumes. I set up a committee to screen, to score them. He came tops, and that's why he's NIS DG today. But after 2 months of being in the saddle, he sent me a text. I want to return to the university. So I said, welcome to my world. You are not going anywhere. I'm glad that in 6 months, there is a change going on at the NIS. And I assure you, apart from the accreditations that will come through, before mid-June this year, stories that will come out of the NIS will surprise you. We're going to return it to a primus institution for sports development. All of this form the ecology of sports as diplomacy and sports as business. My directors from the ministry, I dare not forget them. My deputy directors from the ministry, quite a number of them here. My special advisor, sports, Mary Ojale. Let them see you. Thank you. Then, the NOC, worthy partners, the Secretary General, Mr. Banji is here. Thank you so much. Our experts that flew into the country yesterday, I've had the opportunity to speak to 1 or 2 of you. I want to welcome you very warmly. I believe today we're going to have a very fruitful day as we try to interrogate some of the critical issues. Therefore, let me just preface my 2-page submission this morning, taking a cue and pigging back on what the DG said. I noted a few takeaways, and I wanted that to just headline my own submission this morning. Without any doubt, sports defines a nation. When we talk about Kenya, what comes to mind? The mid and long distance race. It has become a Kenyan brand. 3 weeks ago, I was here for the marathon, Access Bank, and I was so pained as we waited for the first athlete, Ethiopian. So Ethiopia and Kenya, they share that. The second athlete that came through, Ethiopian. The third one, Kenya. The fourth one. So as a Minister of Sports, I was like, okay, this is not looking good. I got a bit of breather when I think the sixth or seventh person was a Nigerian. And in the two interviews I did, one was a live interview. I said, when we return here next year for this marathon, we'll do everything possible to make sure that a Nigerian is one of the three top winners that will come forth. So sports defines the nation as a branding, for branding and also for diplomacy. When you hear India, what comes to mind? Cricket. Tool of diplomacy, big business, an entire value chain that holds the world spellbound. When it comes to Jamaica, what comes to mind? The sprints. And the Jamaican story is so compelling. They struggled for so many years, and then they hit the pause button and say, what do we do? They looked for some of their best coaches, took them to the US, got the best coaches to train them, and said, we're not sending our athletes any longer to the US. We'll send our coaches over there. They get all the knowledge, they come back home and train our athletes on our soil. Since that time, that narrative changed. When it comes to Nigeria, what is our narrative? Football, no doubt. Football is king. And that's why, for me in the last 3 years, even though we paid attention to every sport, at least 12 critical sports, we've also paid good attention to football. If you look at the story of our football development in the last 3 years, working with the NFF, working with other collaborators, we see a new trajectory, never seen before. And we hope that in the next 1 year, we'll be able to build in a sustainable model that will conjure in the minds of everyone when they hear Nigeria, they think about the brand of our football. And that's why even this morning, in faraway Ivory Coast, the Super Falcons, after beating the female team from Ivory Coast 2-0 in Abuja, went to Ivory Coast yesterday and did the impossible. They beat the elephants, they call them, junior elephants, 1-0. 3-0 clean slate. Why is that victory important? It gives this country a 13 unbroken run of being at the Women African Cup of Nations. And that only could have been possible because of the administrators of our football and also because of the commitment and the talent and skills of the players. Secondly, important because the junior elephants are a high-scoring team. The last two matches they played, they beat Niger Republic 20-0. The previous match they played, I don't remember the country, they beat them 9-1. So they were going against a team that was high-scoring, that was really physical and strong. But these girls went there yesterday, they did the country proud. So, ambassadors, sport ambassadors, resonates with diplomacy. I know that that concept started when Chief Odegbami and others were made ambassadors, am I right? And then it stopped for a long time. And then we started it again. Mike Obi came, we made him an ambassador. Igalo came, we made an ambassador. Mary Oyali is also an ambassador. And I want to call on NFF. Don't wait on the ministry alone. The NFF can channel these names to us. It's not just the OFR and the rest. Even as an ambassador, we're going to make that thick because sports is now diplomacy. Having said that, you also talked about, you went through history, talking about how sports, even in the midst of conflict, becomes that oasis of peace for people. And I want to say this, in the next few days, the finals of the, is it Champions Cup? Is it Champions Cup that will be played? Wembley is preparing to host the finals, or I don't know whether the champion, in the next few days. Yes, Champions, yes, at the point where Russia is invading Ukraine. That is not enough to stop the game of football. That is the power of sports, and is also the power of football. So let me say this morning that sports continues to thrill. Sports continues to entertain, to educate, to inspire and fascinate us around the clock. Be it the beauty of the beautiful game. I don't want to mention the beautiful game so that I will not be called a football minister. Or the fierceness of warriors in the ring, dancing like butterflies and singing like the bees. Sports has defined the essence of captivating and etching us to experiences of old, and even those unfolding right before our eyes. So this morning, as I salute our host, Ambassador Segun Odegbami, and indeed the DG of the NIA, Mathematical, you are one of those that have etched many important moments in our memories as a nation. I want to state very clearly that sports is simply now too important in its role within the human experience and indeed international relationships to be business as usual. It has to be conspired or considered as a business requiring all the inputs, all the collaborations that develop and sustain businesses that not only create economic expansion but also continues to make impactful social intervention in our society. Distinguished ambassadors, our friends from sister nations, dignitaries from around the world, sport personalities and administrators in our country, indeed the media. It is an honor to be here, but also each one of us is a critical stakeholder in sports as diplomacy and sports as business. I need not say or quote Nelson Mandela again, but it is true that the power of sports and its intricate relationship with politics dates back to Greco-Roman times. In fact, the Olympics were a positive fallout of this intricate interplay and continues to play that role till this very day. Who could forget the significance of J.C. Owens' 4 gold medals in the Berlin Olympics, making it clear that the notion of a superior race was dead on arrival. Sports can produce amazing teams and humans who change the course of their nations and improve the course of humanity. It can stimulate sustainable economic activity and improve the well-being of societies. And that is what is important to transmit to all of us. We need to make the transition from sports as a recreation to sports as business that will deliver all-round value to our athletes, ensure sustainable development, incremental growth, and indeed build a value chain that benefits the mass of our youth. Sports as a business is the only framework that makes development sustainable and strong. And I will elaborate briefly. Sports deployment as a tool for cohesion, development, and elevation of the black race. What have we done in this country so far? The first step on this journey was having President Muhammadu Buhari in council to reclassify sports from recreation to sport. I recall when I was made the minister, the president charged me to go and ensure systemic improvers were put in place to ensure that we build a solid foundation for our sports. That first step was achieved with the reclassification of sports as business. This was after many technical, multiple sessions with stakeholders that produced preliminary reports. That's why July 2020, sports became business in Nigeria. Working with the private sector participants, working with MDAs, we deepened our work and we set to bring in different kinds of input that will help build a business model around our sports. Some of our partners were the NESG, and as we speak, the National Sports Industry Policy is in its final draft, and very soon will be taken to the Federal Executive Council for final approval. The sports as business policy is anchored on 3 triggers, which we refer to as the 3 I's. The first I is infrastructure. We talk about infrastructural rationalization. The second I is investment. The third I is incentive. All of these are embedded in the sports policy. This, of course, is the logical crystallization of the journey towards a modern, investment-led policy environment following President Buhari's approval to categorize sports in our economic reportage. But also beyond that, the 2021 to 2025 National Development Plan, for the very first time, in December, allocated 88 billion naira for sports development, especially sports as an industry. And of course, we recognize the urgency of bringing back home some of our sporting edifices to good standards. The private sector collaboration has led to the uplifting of the MKO Abiola, and some of these businesses will have the direct into healthcare ecosystem, ensuring that we use sports as the driver of well-being, delivering enhanced national productivity, and significantly improving overall well-being. I will soon round up. But to make this happen, it requires the commitment of all stakeholders, from government to the private sector. It requires a framework, especially a legal framework, that will attract the private sector to invest in existing assets and also get investments to build new ones across the length and breadth of our country. The global sports equipment market is estimated to stand at a value of approximately $150 billion by the year 2023. We have to plug in this sports value chain as a country. The Deloitte report on sports industry cites 3 important issues for 2021, namely expansion of revenue avenues, rethinking the role of sports, and redefining relationship with fans or the supporters. Our sports industry policy addresses these issues beyond 2021 and far into the future. The interest in esports, another multi-billion-dollar sporting area, and other technology-based sporting platforms is significant, and we are very sure that this will be a nest from the present and into the future. We intend to expand the horizons, to redefine the interactions with fans, especially with upcoming virtual realities and emerging technologies. Opportunities abound for our tech-savvy youth to develop innovations upon these platforms. Therefore, for sports to have the power to impact our social, cultural, and political lives, it must be sustainably curated. It must be able to decimate the barriers that exist between the brothers and sisters of our continent so that Africa can achieve its homogeneous and true potential. Sports brands us. It projects us. It defines our spirit of competitiveness. It empowers, it educates, it emancipates. It crystallizes dreams of our people and makes them reinforce their belief in the black race. That is the power of sport, and it is very formidable. Sports also has a very latent future, which we could do with in how we contest for things across most of the continent. We don't want to lose, even though losing is part of the game. And this is a fair mindset to have in a competitive world. However, we must learn to lose with grace and learn from losing so that we come back stronger and more positioned to win. Sports, emphasized through the demographics, especially those of our children and perhaps our political class, can indeed foster a culture of competitiveness without bitterness and a desperation to win without breaking the rules. We recognize this in sports too and are ensuring that anti-doping standards are at the highest levels. Ladies and gentlemen, the integrity of sports must be sacrosanct for it to continue to be a credible source of soft but significant and strong power. Nigeria has what it takes. Nigeria is taking collaborative steps in this direction. Just November last year, I was able to bring 4 ministers of sports to Abuja to work on how sports can be a tool of diplomacy and also empower our youth. The ministers of youth and sports from Egypt, Algeria, Ghana, and South Africa. We've also collaborated with the Turkish government towards youth and sports development through the tool of diplomacy. As Africans, we must love ourselves first. We must seek collaboration amongst ourselves first. We must work with ourselves first before the world can truly take us serious and partner with us on level terms. Commitment, selflessness, organization, and resource optimization will be critical success pillars. We also went further to charge when we met what we call the Abuja Initiative. The ministers agreed to support Egypt in being the first African country to host the Olympic Games. They already have a new sports city they've been building for 4 years. The capabilities of our Egyptian brothers are significant, as those who have visited there recently testified. This will really showcase the strength and capabilities of Africa to the world and bring the world even closer to Africa through sports. The economic opportunities for our people are indeed significant, as indeed the symbolic importance of hosting the world. So we hope that Egypt will get that opportunity. Africa has successfully hosted the Senior FIFA World Cup in South Africa, the Under-20 World Cup in Tunisia, Nigeria in 1999, Egypt 2009. These are testaments to the fact that inherent in Africa is the capabilities that we have. Therefore, in closing this afternoon, I want to charge and urge us to continue to support the drive for sports as business, for the industrialization of sports, for the development of the sports value chain, and for sports as diplomacy. Tolerance, ability to listen to multiple views, the passion to always see the bigger picture, the imperativeness of public and private sector collaboration, each fulfilling its obligations within transparent monitoring frameworks, dialogue and collaboration across borders, and much more are factors we must always bear in mind in all that we do. I thank you very much for listening.
Before I start, let me just give you a story about the power of sports to unify. So in 1996, I was a volunteer at the Olympic Games in Atlanta, and on August 3rd, 1996, something very unique happened. So I was going to the Marriott Hotel in Atlanta to pick friends so that we can go to the stadium to watch the relays. Good to see you, Mary. To watch the relays of the second to the last day of the Olympic Games. And as I'm pulling into the Marriott, I see somebody wearing a Nigerian tracksuit running to my vehicle saying, let's go, look, we are late. I mean, what? I mean, so he said that I'm the PA to the minister, that we are going to Athens to watch Nigeria play Argentina in the finals of the of men's football at those Olympic Games. And, you know, he just entered the front of the car. Now, my vehicle at the time did look official. It was a black Mercedes, and I had the Nigerian flag on the front. So it was looking like an official vehicle. So me, I thought, okay, you know, back then, when you're much younger, you can make those impulsive decisions just like that. And I decided, man, this sounds fun, let's go. So we went to the stadium. By the time we got to the stadium, Argentina had already scored. But I can tell you that there was a palpable belief in the stadium that day that even if Argentina spots us 4 goals, that we will come back to win. Primarily because of what we did the match before against Brazil. So at the end of the day, Nigeria was in fact able to beat Argentina. First time an African nation on the men's side had ever won an Olympic gold medal in a team competition. So after the match, they came to where we were sitting and said that I will be taking the Honorable Minister back to the hotel. I'm like, really? Okay. So they tell you where to back the vehicle, and then the minister comes. So the minister comes to the vehicle, he gets in, and the Minister of Sports at the time was the Honorable Jim Wobodu. So, and the PA to the minister was Menasara Ido. Okay. I mean, he introduced himself after the match and everything. But, yeah, that's it. Yeah, so we're driving back to the hotel from Athens, about 1.5 hours drive. And I had a phone in the vehicle. So the minister starts taking calls from the vehicle. And by the time we get back to the hotel, we could see Nigerians already lined up at the front of the hotel, waiting for us. So we get to the minister's suite where he was staying, and we hear then, at that time, that Lagos, Calabar, Benin, Ilorin, Makurdi, that the whole country is ablaze in celebration. That's the first time that we heard what was happening was when we got back to the hotel. So they were making arrangements. Did they send a plane for the team? And then what about the other players? Because if you remember the day before, we had a long jumper, Chioma, yes, also claimed gold. So those arrangements were being made. And then right around 11 p.m., this is after several people from other African nations came to the suite to congratulate the minister. I mean, I remember the basketball player Hakeem Olajuwon, who was playing for Team USA, also came. Dikembe Mutombo of the Congo. They all streamed in. And then we also had some Brazilians coming to thank us for beating Argentina. You know, I mean, it was incredible. Say, yeah, we know you beat us in the match before, but, you know, this is great for us. So it's at that time that we could see the power of sports, the unification, the suspension of tribalism, of conflict. All those differences we had, all of a sudden just went away for that moment, for that night, for that week. I mean, recognizing the path that these young men did, and as an Olympian, as a gold medalist, no one can ever take that away. So, on record, Nigeria will always be the first country to ever win an Olympic gold medal in men's team sports. Okay? So, the power of sports. My name is ID Uyo. I am with ID Sports Group in Atlanta, and what I'd like to talk to you about today is just that. Various elements of the sports industry, primarily focusing on diplomacy, using sport to achieve policy, commercial, and economic objectives. All right, so a little bit about the ID Sports Group. We've had a chance to work with people like Ambassador Andrew Young, Edwin Moses, Carl Lewis over the years. And most recently, we've spent time working with Olympic committees in Nigeria in Kenya, Rwanda, Zimbabwe, Zambia, Malawi, etc. All right. In 2016, we had a chance to do a project with the UN with the Refugee Olympic team in Rio. And so for today, there are various elements I'd like to focus on today's agenda. I want to give you a sports industry overview. When we talk of the sports industry, where is it? How much is it worth? Why should I care? You know, people keep saying sports as a business, but can we quantify what that means when we say sports as a business? What is that exactly? How do I benefit? Where's my slice? Can it work in Nigeria? Can it work in Africa? If so, how can it work in Africa? Then I'd like to talk about the political economy of sports itself. Why do countries use sports as a political weapon? Boycotting. Why do they do that? To what aim? Is there a broader policy objective behind that? And then destination management. As a country, can you use sports to enhance or develop your image, as the case were? Okay? So let me start with a sports industry overview. In 2019, the sports industry was worth $459 billion. $459 billion, and it was growing at a compound annual growth rate of 3.4% per year. But then COVID came. So when COVID came in 2020, COVID reduced the value of the sports business by 15.4%. There were no events, football tournaments were canceled, and so on and so forth. So the value of the sports industry went down to $388 billion. But we have reason to believe that the sports industry is rebounding. All right? So by the year 2030, the sports industry will be about a $1 trillion industry. So there's your answer. $1 trillion. So if you look at sports as an industry, you need to look at it in the same way that you would look at manufacturing, electronics, oil, energy, and gas, okay, automotive, drinks, beverages. That's what sports is. Sports is, in fact, a quantifiable business, and it is led by football. If you see the growth of sports, football accounts for nearly half of the growth of global sports worldwide. Okay? And the growth of football is growing faster than the gross domestic products of major countries. So that said, the football industry is growing almost 4 times the rate of the U.S. economy. Okay? Yeah. And by the way, there are several anomalies in sports. For instance, now, where you work, you don't make more than your boss. Your boss makes more money than you. But in sports, Cristiano Ronaldo makes magnitudes of more money than his coach. And he's not the only one on his team that makes more money than his boss. Okay? So sports has that anomaly, if you will. Okay? So if you look at these 3 men, do you recognize these 3 men? The person on the right, the president of the International Olympic Committee is on the left. The FIFA chairman is in the middle. And you recognize who's on the right? The Secretary General of the United Nations. All right, so if you look at this, who has the smallest platform to convey the message? It's the UN Secretary General. You see, the FIFA World Cup draw will attract 3 billion people. 3 billion people will watch the FIFA World Cup draw for the 2022 FIFA World Cup. Who else can command a global audience of 3 billion people at the same time watching a single event? Nobody. Not even the Secretary General of the United Nations. So to be clear, I am not trying to diminish the Secretary General's role, but what I'm trying to say is that the president of FIFA has a far bigger platform than anybody on the planet. Maybe the president of the IOC has something similar, but not nearly as big. The FIFA World Cup final in 2022 between Nigeria and whomever else they play, that FIFA World Cup final will be watched by an estimated 4 billion people. Supposing the president of FIFA takes the microphone before the World Cup final and addresses the earth, he has the entire universe as an audience. The power of sport, nobody else can command that kind of audience. All right? To put it in context. Opening ceremonies, 2008 Olympic Games in Beijing, 4.5 billion people watched. But you know what? There were no sporting events. So what is it that makes people watch an event even though there's no active sports play? And we expect that for 2022, the FIFA World Cup in 2022, of course, will be the largest event in history, but it will also be the last World Cup with 32 teams. After that, they're going to a 48-team format. So you can imagine the commercial appeal that will occur as a result of that. And we cannot underestimate the power of social media in sport. All right, so can you recognize the brand of his kits? What kit is that? I'm sorry? Puma. All right. Alex Song. After Alex Song got that red card, Puma went to social media and they started trending a hashtag called Fair Play, and they made $1 million off of that red card. How is that possible? Somebody gets a red card and he's sent off the pitch. Normally, a thing of embarrassment, a little bit of shame. Yet, the sports marketing company that sponsors him makes almost $1 million from that red card. Sports marketing, commercialization of sports. And Cristiano Ronaldo. Whenever Cristiano Ronaldo sends out a message on Instagram, he makes $975,000. When Cristiano Ronaldo sends out a message on Twitter, that message is worth $1 million to Cristiano Ronaldo. So I sent out a tweet this morning. Not only was I not paid, I had to pay for the data, right? They charged me for the data, right? Okay? So now, if you look at it, so the power of social media in sports cannot be underestimated. At the time, this is a bit old, he was making $34 million per annum with Juventus. But on Instagram, he was making $48 million from Instagram. Social media was paying Cristiano Ronaldo $14 million more than what he was making playing football. All right? So if you are a sports brand, sports organization, thinking of sports in diplomatic context, you cannot ignore the commercial appeal of a coordinated social media strategy. It's part of the reason why when Lionel Messi went to PSG, it was a very big move, but it did not have the same impact as Neymar's move to PSG because the shirt sponsorship for PSG had already been done, all right, by that time. It was still a very good move, but commercially, it didn't have that same impact. And then we look at Marcus Rashford. So in the UK, the British government had this plan to stop subsidizing free meals in school. Marcus Rashford, who was once a beneficiary of that program, stepped up a social media campaign and forced the British government to reverse course. Not only did they reverse course, they even improved the quality of the meals they were serving to children in the schools. Athletes using social media effectively. Athletes. And it would take an athlete to be able to do something like that. Okay. Sports diplomacy, okay. Suspense conflicts. We talked about the 1996 Olympic Games in Atlanta, all right? For those of you old enough to remember the game with Brazil, everybody lost hope, right? Is there anybody here that thought Nigeria would come back and win that game? Nobody. It's the first time a team has beaten Brazil and Argentina back-to-back in international competition. The first time a team has come from a goal deficit to do that. There were many firsts on that level with that team. That was a really special team. But in terms of sport diplomacy, it brought everybody together at the time. And superpowers. Okay. 2005, Didier Drogba. Any Chelsea fans? Chelsea? Liverpool? Liverpool. We have gifts for the Liverpool fans only. Okay. All right. Yeah. So I don't know if the audio is working, but during the Ivorian conflict in 2000, the Ivorian conflict started somewhere around 2002, 2003, where you had rebels controlling part of the country, and in the south of the country, you had a functioning government. The Côte d'Ivoire qualified for the World Cup for the first time in 2006. So during that qualification cycle, after they qualified, Didier Drogba appealed to both sides to drop their weapons. So how did he do it?
Football is more than just a sport, and sometimes its players transform into true heroes. Didier Drogba is one of them. His devotion and generosity have brought people with different backgrounds and political views together. Once, he even helped to end a civil war. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for even more videos.
We're going to manage to change the mentality.
October 8th, 2005. Minutes after having qualified for the 2006 World Cup with Ivory Coast, Didier Drogba knelt before his fans. Why? He was calling for a national reconciliation for a country that had long been split into two with so much wealth cannot lose itself into darkness in a war like this one. Drogba ended with a clear request. Please, put down your weapons, hold elections, and everything will get better. A hero on the field, as proven by his many titles and the medals he's reaped with Chelsea, Drogba is equally heroic off of it. As time passes, he's become aware of his own influence and how to use it. And clearly, he's using it for good. October 8th, 2005 proved to be a turning point for Ivory Coast. What Didier Drogba said took root. In the days that followed, Ivorians talked about nothing but Drogba. Football's darling had become a political hero. Buses driving through downtown Abidjan were covered with praise for Drogba. Didier the Great. Thank you, Didier. Didier for president. Those in power recognized Drogba's capacity to influence the public. That's why Charles Konan Banny, Ivory Coast's prime minister at the time, even consulted him on political matters. And Drogba agreed to participate, always with the goal of bringing peace to his country, men in his country, and not just for his football accolades.
Didier Drogba using sports. And somebody mentioned during the Nigerian Civil War, Pelé came to Nigeria to play with the Santos. The football club Santos of Brazil was so big that it outgrew the Brazilian Premier League. So Santos needed to go internationally in order to continue to make revenue. So Pelé came to Nigeria during the Civil War. They suspended hostility of a policy that had nothing to do with them, but a policy that was needed. The 2010 World Cup in South Africa in 1886 to negotiate with the African National Congress and the National Party led by Chief Olusegun Obasanjo at the time. Without Nigeria, South Africa does not get the 2010 World Cup. And in 1980, after the Soviet Union, Russia invaded Afghanistan, the U.S. led a boycott. And they sent Muhammad Ali to Africa to help convince African nations to also boycott the 1980 Olympics. When he came to Nigeria, they said, look, at the time, President Shehu Shagari refused to meet with him. He was so incensed. I mean, you're asking us to boycott, but 4 years ago, you didn't join us for a boycott in Montreal. At the end of the day, Muhammad Ali, Kenya, and Liberia. Liberia, of course, being a former colony for American freedom. And they put beer fridges full of beer, free beer. But you have to be able to open the fridge to get the beer. It's free if you can open the fridge to get the beer. Okay. The only way you can open the fridge is if you put in a Canadian passport. So that forces you to speak with the Canadian who will then promote his country, right, so that you can have the free beer. So they brought this concept. They did it also at the Sochi Olympics in 2014. So let me show you what they did.
He's licking it. Is anyone here from Canada? Canadians scan your passport to open fridge.
Ouais, mais ici, tu prends notre passeport, ça va marcher aussi.
No. Is there anybody Canadian? Are you Canadian?
I have a passport. Now, does a Canadian fridge open different to an English one?
Makes me homesick. I've never even been to Canada.
Think of ways of creatively using sport to promote your image, your destination. I want to show you another example, but this